Hi, Casey. Thank you so much for agreeing to work with me today. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you don't mind, can you just start by introducing yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Evans, and this is my 20th year in education. I teach at Dickinson Middle School in North Dakota. I'm a language arts interventionist for seventh and eighth grade. But prior to that, my experience has just been as a middle school language arts teacher and an instructional coach for 1 year also. Nick and I taught prior to this year on the same language arts team and the same middle school team. So we got to know each other through that, and it was one of my top two favorite years was our team together. So definitely one of the best teachers I've ever worked with. So
Oh man,
enjoy getting to visit with him again.
you're way too kind.
Yeah.
I should just since students, since you're listening to this, you should know that Casey put up with me and taught me a whole lot. I don't know what my actual contribution always was,
Oh
other
no,
than being silly, but
fun and positive and open mind and heart.
oh man, that's very kind. So, as a reading interventionist that specializes in a seventh and eighth grade reading or student age, what would you say like your typical day looks like?
So I'm currently they're splitting my time between a tier two intervention and a tier three intervention. Tier two is essentially teaching grade level standards. Just the kids need retaught. So I work with the language arts teachers in seventh and eighth grade, and they'll be teaching how to summarize, and they'll find a group of kids that didn't get it. And so then they might come with me and I reteach how to summarize, or I break it down to the foundational skill. Maybe they can't summarize because they couldn't find the main idea. And so I'll do about 3 hours a day. I pull small groups and kind of reteach what's happening in the regular language arts classroom. It's not a specialized class, doesn't need parent permission. It's just a small group reteach of what's happening. I just call myself another language arts teacher. I spend 2 blocks of my day teaching the tier three intervention, where those kids are pulled from an elective, and it is one of their elective classes, which is the negative part of it. But we have yet to develop a schedule where they're not missing an elective for it, but we're working on it. Um, so they come to my class every day until they show and I'm teaching the foundational reading skills. We do a screening process. So we see whether it's a phonics gap, fluency gap, a comprehension gap, and then we break them into groups because there's an ELL teacher that teaches a boost group, and then sometimes the SPED teachers will teach a group. So we try to break them based on their skills. So currently, I did a phonics group. Those kids kind of moved up to the next level, and currently doing more of a multisyllabic word fluency approach. So every day I'm teaching the very scripted, explicit instruction in breaking down multisyllabic words into prefixes and suffixes and finding the vowel sounds. And then I do a lot of progress monitoring and tracking their progress and communicating with them about where they are and where they need to be. And then the ultimate goal is that I can get them reading and comprehending. We shoot for 50th percentile at the grade level below, and then we assume they're ready to be successful in the classroom with just tier two support.
That's awesome. So you were throwing around a few terms that I just want to make sure students understand really well.
Okay.
One of the first thing you brought up, phonics, fluency, comprehension, which my students should know at this point. Those are three of like the big five.
Right.
But can you just take some time to talk about like the five different elements of reading acquisition and literacy?
Yeah, so my intervention piece really focuses on the I don't know if they're all intertwined clearly, but like the stair steps of phonemic awareness, phonics, and fluency is where we hit those foundational skills. Um, we try to mix in the vocabulary and some of the background information, like the program I'm using right now does hit. We talk about the word meanings of the prefixes and suffixes, and we do vocabulary every day too. For like we review some vocabulary and adding those prefixes and suffixes to words to understand what they mean. Um, but the comprehension piece, we don't teach together.
Yeah.
But as far as I guess that's dependent upon the classroom at this point, but we will do a comprehension group too, where they will get that.
Mhm.
Yeah, once they're reading fluently, then we kind of hit that. We do it more of a stair step. First they have to have this, then they get this, then they get this, then they get the
Mhm.
comprehension. Comprehension is kind of the final piece to the
Yeah.
puzzle. But if I were teaching in a regular language arts classroom, probably not sixth, seventh, and eighth grade necessarily am I hitting all 5 areas of Scarborough's rope, but I would definitely in a kindergarten, first, second, third, be hitting all of the 5
Yeah.
strands.
Absolutely. Um, so that'll probably be a quiz question, students, as you listen to this, just for your own heads up. Scarborough's rope. If you haven't read the article on Scarborough's rope that's in Moodle right now, you got to go do that because that'll be a quiz question.
Yes.
But moving forward, I guess I'm just curious. How do you teach intervention classes in a way that doesn't make seventh graders and eighth graders feel dumb or less than or different than their peers? Like, how do you manage that?
Um, well, im immediately the piece is trying to build the relationships so they feel safe in my classroom to not be embarrassed. Um, I was lucky to be able to do some grouping. So the, knowing the teachers that had them before, so I didn't get too many of the too cool kids together. So I strategic grouping was pretty important because
Mhm.
they're middle schoolers, and if they're with their best buddy, it's a little bit harder to get them where they're going. But I did what I could to like get to know who they were. But immediately I showed them where they were, like
Mm.
showed them we use easy CBM to progress monitor. And it makes a pretty nice graph. And then I graphed them and I got them to immediately see, hopefully, just in the little bit of time, they were able to see some improvements. So as soon as the kids realized they were making progress and that they were actually getting better, they
Mhm.
were bought in.
Awesome.
I had a student that was kind of being ornery one day, and the other student, like, for lack of a better term, one of the naughtiest boys, probably in the eighth grade, that's had lots of discipline things. He says to the other student, he says, um, it's working. Just listen for a little bit. This works. And so, like,
That's
he knew
awesome.
that he was getting better at reading. And so, like, once if they genuinely believe they're getting better, like they already know they struggle, like that's
Yeah.
obvious, right? Like I don't them being in the class wasn't their first thing, and that the key is getting them to buy in and believe they can get better. And so once they see progress, they're definitely bought in. And then of course, like the 2 weeks before I had enough data to show them they were making progress, I mean, I bribed them. So like it's a very that was actually we use, oh gosh, this I'm not we have not focused on as much. HRS, Nick could probably tell me he was a 43 elements of what's his name? Venn diagram.
Marzano?
Marzano's 43 elements. Um, so
Three,
my goal,
10, 43.
yes, goal was rewards. And so it's a very rewards based system initially. Um, Completion of certain things, showing that improvement piece. And so they respond to candy and stickers and just things like a first grader would. Um, so that's kind of how I got the buy-in. I will tell you though, as it's hit in third quarter here, and the kids, some of them that have been in it for a little bit, and the program I'm using right now is really, really explicit and kind of repetitive. They're getting a
Mm,
little whiny and a little bored. So trying to revamp that whole system of how do I keep them bought in? I
yeah,
just actually was thinking I need to progress monitor again so they see that they are still making
yeah.
progress. But I have an instructional coach, and she just had observed, and she said, "What can I do?" And I didn't know the answer, and then today I was like, "I need help keeping his kids bought in," and that was my next goal was to ask her like,
Yeah,
how do I keep him here?
absolutely. So, I've already told my students, hopefully you guys have picked this up as you listen to this, that last year I worked with Casey and we got a grant. We got money and we went and we bought a bunch of books for kids, and then we put them in
Nick
book
got a
club
grant.
groups.
Nick did it.
Oh goodness. Well, my question is, do you think the book flood method is what a kid who's below reading grade level needs, or would you, I guess, take a different approach than just handing kids interesting books?
I can't tell you the amount of times I said this year, I can't believe I got bamboozled last year. I bought into the rainbows and unicorns of, and I don't know how much you want me to like say names,
Say
but
them all. Say them all. We are
the
very open.
the Penny Gallagher, Penny Kittle and Kelly Gallagher, fantastic. Love it. It's beautiful and amazing and wonderful. And she has data that says what she does works. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it is definitely a rainbow and unicorn world. And she was working with high school college kids, not seventh graders. We're at a 40% proficient in our seventh grade reading. Throwing seventh grade level books at them, they're not reading them.
Yeah.
So I wish that we had got a resource that was a full-fledged curriculum that covered all 5 areas. Probably again at middle school it's not going to be as much the phonemic awareness and phonics, but I believe that it has to be research based, practice, data driven, and some not scripted. You can make a box curriculum what you want it to be. You can still make it engaging and fun and all those things, but you don't know if you're teaching what needs to be taught if you're just pulling from here and there and doing a fun book club. And we asked that last year a lot when we were doing book clubs, like how do we assess this? How do we cover our essential standards with this? Well, you can do a little of this and a little of this. It sounds cool, it's beautiful, it is amazing, kids just choosing to read, but not when you're at 40% proficiency. They need explicit, clear instruction.
Yeah, I think we probably contribute a lot to the Matthew effect of
Yes.
the kids who are good at reading are getting better. They're enjoying it. And the kids who struggle, and you and I can both think of specific kids we know didn't read an actual page of their books, did not grow as readers, and we spent a lot of time working with them, and it wasn't time well spent. So hopefully, kids, as you listen to Casey and I talk, you can realize that teaching is very reflective in nature. You won't always nail it on the head every time, and that's okay. You just grow and you move forward, and you reflect well with action steps that follow. Because I think we both look back and we have really pretty libraries in those classrooms. You know, there are beautiful brand new books all over, and that's not what gets kids to read. So
no, it's not that you can't do a form of book clubs and add that to your curriculum that you're teaching, but it's just not enough in and of itself.
Yeah, and just so you guys know as well, the names Penny Kittle and Kelly Gallagher, they are both teachers, practicing teachers that published with Heinemann, which is the publishing company that in Sold the Story episodes 1 and 2, they talk about Heinemann publishers. So if you guys are ever curious of other authors in the Heinemann world, you can check out the Heinemann website. I just did that recently myself, and I was shocked at how many of my favorite authors are Heinemann authors, really. So like, oh my goodness, like this is insane. It feels like literacy is owned by this company.
Familiar with, if you're listening to Sold a Story, like the Lucy Calkins dream world of reading, the kids get a pillow and a blanket. And what the statistic of what like 60% of kids can learn to read that way. So it's kind of where our data is showing it. That's what our kids had as elementary kids. So now we've got, so if we had 100 or 95, then maybe having book club world would be amazing. If 95% of our kids were reading at grade level in 7th grade, maybe we could do book clubs. But instead, we're trying to fill the holes from lacking of those foundational skills.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully, I don't think we'll ever have a 100% proficient world. And
No.
because so much of it does start at the home. But as teachers, I've been telling my students, and I think you'd agree, like sometimes it feels like your main job is to keep doors open. You're not exactly you're not always a door opener. We all want to be door openers. We all aspire to be the door opener. But some days you just got to be the person who doesn't close the door. You just got to be the one who's giving those kids what they need, um, to get the basic skills they need to succeed. Practical literacy. So I guess, yeah, I see my Zoom clock timer is winding down, and I know your prep ends here soon, Casey. But what would you tell a group of individuals, my students, but we have a very, as I mentioned earlier, it's a variety of different students. We have some who are actually high schoolers. I've got some who are college age. I have some who are older and coming back. What would you tell my group about being a literacy interventionist? And what does your job, I guess, mean to you?
Um, gosh, I hope I don't get emotional because I'm kind of a mess sometimes. Um, I joked with my husband on the way home one day. He's like, "How was your day?" And I was like, "Oh, just saving lives." And he's like, "Whatever." And I'll tell you, the Soul the Story podcast did it for me. To know what I was doing was so important. And some of the kids that I get in those tier 3 like reading interventions are some stories that would shock you. Some of their history and life stories. But I literally feel like if I can get them reading at a 7th grade level before they leave 8th grade, or even a 6th grade level before they read 8th grade, it literally could be the difference in whether they make it or not. Living and dying. I mean, the research on like whether they go to prison and your chance if you go to prison, and like reading is where it's at. And so I guess like it isn't always fun, and it's very explicit, and there's a reason it needs to be very research based. So trying to get those kids to buy in and let them see that growth, I just feel like every day I can teach them one more reading lesson and get them a little farther is a difference maker for them.
Absolutely.
So I guess I just feel like I am literally saving lives.
That's the coolest. And I'll tell you, I'll tell my class too, everyone, like Casey Evans is a teacher who does save lives. She is a teacher who makes a difference day in and day out. The way she treats people, the way she treats me as a coworker, and there's not a student at Dickinson Middle School who had Casey who wouldn't look back and say that was one of my best English teachers ever. So it's been a privilege to talk with you and interview you, Casey. It's super
I
fun.
don't
So.
think I'm quite qualified for this, but I am happy to do anything for you. So,
Oh man. Well, thank you. Well, I'm gonna hit the pause button on the recording, but we'll still be so there's one moment.
okay.
Everybody, thank you for listening to this episode of my class podcast. And of course, if you ever have
Reach
any
out if
questions,
anyone has questions. Yeah.
yep,
I can give
absolutely.
you contact or email or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And for one of your interview assignments, maybe Casey would be willing to do an interview assignment with you guys. So we'll see. But all right. Thank you guys. We'll talk to you
Bye, everyone.
later.